We're watching it happen right before our eyes. We're watching things like labor shortages push business owners to automate their businesses through robots, through point of sale systems. I don't know about you, but I used to never see people come to the table with a credit card machine, but now almost every restaurant's doing it.
In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Welcome back to the Deal Board, everybody. And today we have an exciting episode. We're going to talk about the future, and specifically an area of business consulting and practice called Futurism, which I have been recently introduced to. So we've got two exciting experts on the show, but Futurism, what does that mean to you, Andy?
It brings me back to when I was a kid and I used to read the Isaac Asimov books about robots and he was writing like in the 40s and whenever he was writing back in the day, and it's incredible like how much of that stuff has come true. Carl Sagan, all those guys talking about futurism, and we're watching it happen right before our eyes. We're watching things like labor shortages push business owners to automate their businesses through robots, through point of sale systems. I don't know about you, but I used to never see people come to the table with a credit card machine, but now almost every restaurant's doing it.
Yeah, actually, I love that. That's like one of my favorite innovation changes. Yes. Yeah, it's so much easier. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. So like I'm an 80s child, right? So my vision of the future was always like Ready Player One and all that stuff. And I had these fears about the future of robots and AI taking over the world. And I was actually at one of my executive MBA programs at MIT recently, and I heard one of our guests speaking about futurism and how it affects businesses and entrepreneurs. And it was a complete mindset shift for me of that, yes, the future is happening fast, but we have the opportunity to really harness what's going to change in our businesses. And it actually happens slower than we think, right? So we might be hearing about the metaverse and all that kind of stuff, but, and Pascal says this in his interview, but like in all likelihood that, a coffee shop owner or a small business owner has to create something in the metaverse today is not the case, right? We have this opportunity to sit back and take it all in and figure out how to use all these changes as opportunities for us. So the mindset shift for me was that this future and all this fast development and innovation actually creates all this opportunity that didn't exist maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, there's going to be whole new industries. There's going to be whole new ways about doing business. There's going to be a lot less perhaps travel involved in business because, maybe your walls or your virtual reality. I mean, look at it. They're having concerts now where they have, these holograms come in, and it's amazing. Did you see they just had the Hall of Fame game at the Iowa cornfield, and they had Harry Carey come in and sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and it was a hologram, and it looked scary, real scary.
I know. That was actually, so when I was introduced to Pascal the first time, it was in 2019. We were in Hong Kong, and they had that technology. And my first thought obviously is now I can see Bruce Springsteen perform for the rest of my life, right? So I'm very excited about that. But there's so many industries that are popping up. We're talking to a business owner that we're likely going to be representing in the near future for sale, who it's a niche industry, so I can't tell exactly what they're doing, but they've built a whole business, speaking of the metaverse, in the metaverse, multi-million-dollar valued business that was just created in the last 24 months.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you know what? My guest that I interviewed, Oren Schauble from Product World, he has a newsletter, and he talks specifically about how easy it is or how incredible opportunity there is for you to start your own business online. He does things like leverages Amazon stores and things like that, where people have started these businesses and made tons of money. And there's just a huge opportunity for you to create a product these days and go viral. And I think we've talked about that in some of our past episodes, but Oren has a website and a newsletter that he keeps everybody up to date with this, and it's fascinating. He's a young guy, so he's out there just seeing all that cutting edge stuff.
Yeah. And Pascal and I talk a little bit about that, but we also go through, he has this really interesting process of evaluating whether a technology is important for you to engage with now. So if you are overwhelmed by the pace at which everything's changing or your industry is changing, his process, this like 3-step process, allows you to like slow everything down and have like a systematic way of figuring out whether this affects you today or 5 years from now, or maybe not even at all in your business. So really interesting interview. He also has a newsletter. He's the founder of Be Radical, and you can subscribe to their newsletter just to get their take on everything. So I know this is a different topic for us, Andy, but really excited to bring this perspective to our listeners.
Yeah, and it does tie into what we do, and it's going to change the way you're going to be able to buy businesses. And I actually do talk about that with Oren. He was very talking about all the things out there that we're going to see coming up. So really interesting interviews. I think it's a great subject. So let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our deal of the week.
Deal of the week. Sold.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And it is Deal of the Week. And we have John Chaffee from Transworld Business Advisors of East North Carolina. And I just had to have John on because he closed a very nice deal, large deal, and we just wanted to talk about it here. So, John, welcome and congrats again.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate being invited on the show.
Yeah. So tell us about the deal. Tell us about it.
It was certainly an interesting one. Took a while to materialize. Got it through a referral. Contacted the company. They said they had a seller or two that they had in mind, and please call them back in a few months. So I had to wait. Called them back. Got a meeting. Convinced them that Transworld was the right organization to do the deal with them, represent them. It's a great company. They kind of float around $8 million a year in revenue. Pretty consistent in terms of actually on an upward turn of about $1.8 million plus or minus in adjusted EBITDA.
Right.
There's actually two companies. One was basically captive of the others where they held their equipment. And the company leased from that company, the operating company did. So combined, they had adjusted EBITDA of about 2.2 million.
Right.
We established a target price of about a little over 11 million. Ended up getting an offer that they accepted at 11 and a half. So a 5X multiple, which obviously they and we were very excited about.
Right. And what kind of business was it again?
It was a machining and fabrication company. So nice little manufacturing company, started several years ago, taken over by a pair of brothers who tremendously built the company, grew the company over a few decades worth of time, did very well.
Yeah. And I think those companies are becoming more and more popular as we see more manufacturing coming back on shore.
Yes, sir. Exciting times on a good number of those folks that started businesses, 30 years, some odd years ago were beginning to look like me, interested in retiring. And, in a good number of instances, they don't have a family member that's interested in taking over the business. So a great opportunity to find a buyer for them.
And you did a nice search and you wound up with a few options, right, for them?
We did. We finally got the listing signed in, I think it was September of 21, and got the SIM out later that month or early October. By Thanksgiving, we had 6 IOIs, indications of interest.
Sure.
Pre-screened those, had 3 LOIs received by Christmas, and the owner signed that one LOI January 5th of 2022. And then we endured a rather long process of due diligence.
Well, it sounds like you needed a good quality of earnings with two intercompany going on, and especially with those equipment leases that can get tricky and the capital equipment. So sounds like you had a good team.
We really did, and it went well. As fortunately, we had a buyer that had a good group of investors and advisors behind them. And while they were going through the process, the one investor remarked, "Well, any good deal falls apart at least twice before you get to the end." Right. And if he wasn't right on the money.
There you go. All right, John, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you if they have another manufacturing business they want to sell?
Would love to hear from them, Andy. Thank you. Mobile number 252-933-9455. Email address Chaffee, CHAFF like in Fox, E as in Echo, @tworld.com.
Excellent. Great deal. Congratulations again, John, and kudos. Good job.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Andy.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Deal Board. And today, as you know, we're talking a little bit of a different topic. We're talking about futurism and how futurism affects us as small business owners and entrepreneurs. And I knew for this conversation, I wanted to bring on one of my favorite minds in this area, Pascal Finette. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and then I'm going to welcome him to the show. So over nearly 3 decades in the technology space, Pascal has accrued all kinds of experience you'd want in a high-level strategic advisor. He started on the net before there was a web browser, learned his way through founding a series of tech startups, launched a consulting firm to support entrepreneurs in scaling their own, and built a portfolio investing in early stage tech companies. He held leadership positions at era-defining powerhouses like Google and eBay. He opened innovation and entrepreneurship and was the faculty chair for Singularity University. But I think what makes Pascal truly a one-of-a-kind is his ability to translate all of this experience into teachable insights, principles, and practices that I find are very relatable and applicable for small business owners. So, Pascal, welcome to the Deal Board. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Jessica, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about being here and talking about the future with you.
Yeah. So let's just start with futurism in general as a topic for small business owners. It can be very overwhelming. Why don't we start? Actually, this wasn't what we prepped for in the green room, but why don't you just tell our listeners how do you define futurism? Like, what is it in today's society?
Absolutely. So let me just start off with, I actually don't like the term all that much, because the thing about the future is unwritten. And I think that's the beauty, particularly as an entrepreneur, we understand this inherently. But clearly, there's a lot of people who tell you they know what the future is. And you should know that anybody who tells you they know what the future is, they always have an agenda, right? They always have a particular version of the future to sell you. And I think we're recording this year, 2022, in the middle of the year. We're currently seeing this a lot with like blockchain and crypto and NFTs and all these technologies where everybody tells you this is a particular version of the future. So I think that's important to understand as a starting point. The second part, though, is also important to understand, because when we look at technology, very often you can see the future in its early stages. If you have your eye peeled towards it, you're not filtering it out, and you have the fantasy to think about what could be. So good example is, I love to use this, I'm probably dating myself here, but 1997, many of us remember the Palm Pilot, the little computer we'd put into our pocket, and magic, you could have your address book with you, at all the times, for whatever reason you wanted to have that. That thing, if you look at it today, looks an awful lot like an iPhone. But many of us didn't see, right? Many of us didn't see the iPhone in this device. And also, even those who saw it might have thought, oh my God, this will become a communicator device in 2 years. And it took, in reality, 10 years to get us to the iPhone. So I think this is interesting pieces and points to keep in mind.
I love that. I love that, of just thinking about, when someone's talking to you about what the future is, like what is the agenda behind it, right? Because there always is. And so I think delving into our next topic, it is that the future can be really overwhelming, especially for small business owners and entrepreneurs, that they're pushing this boulder uphill already, trying to do a startup and get a business up and running. And now, especially in today's environment, and I'm sure it's in any decade we've had these things, but we've got Web3 and we've got NFTs. So how do business owners sort through, I want to call it noise, but right, it could be noise, and not be stuck in this part of overwhelm to figure out how this applies to them?
I personally think a good chunk of that overwhelm comes from just the cacophony of like noises, like stuff you get like exposed all the time. And I think it's really important to understand, particularly as we're looking at technology. So I take a very technology focused look at the future, just because of my background. And when you look at technology, realize that, as I already mentioned in this Palm Pilot example, it takes often years, very often decades for technology to mature. So my first point here for anyone listening to this, just chill, lean back a little bit, get a lemonade, and just when you see the latest crazy, and you have to be on the blockchain or whatever the thing is, or you need to be in the metaverse. Just lean back a little bit and chill. And we like to ask essentially 3 questions of the future when you look at a technology trend. The first one is, take a really hard and realistic assessment of how mature is the technology. Are we talking about something which is, done in the lab, but really hasn't been scaled? Or is it really something you can just buy in your local Best Buy, right? And it's really only a question of scale, the business model behind it. It needs to be pretty close to being able to buy it in Best Buy for it to really have an impact. The second one is, we like to look at the surrounding factors. So think about in any change in technology, there's a lot of things you as the inventor can change and can do, and there's a whole bunch of stuff you can't. A good example for this is always regulation, rules and regulation, but also even things like social acceptance, etc. There's a beautiful example for this: self-driving cars. There was recently done a study in the United States by Pew Research, representative study, which showed that more than 50% of the population in the United States actually doesn't trust these cars. They don't want to sit in one. They're mentally not ready yet. So if you build a self-driving car startup, maybe you're Elon Musk, you need to realize that at least 50% of your potential customers are currently not there yet. Right. And then the last factor is what we call the utilities. Is it even useful? Does it actually solve a real issue? And when you do apply those, I think you can actually suss out noise from signal pretty well. And again, chill, relax a little bit. But when the time is right, of course, when you see the technology is just right and all these factors fall into play, you want to pounce. And you're an entrepreneur. You can do this. This is what you do. This is what you live and breathe, of course.
Yeah. It's really interesting. When I heard you first talk about applying these 3 different areas to each technology, it got me thinking a lot about our clients. And, most of our listeners are small business owners, entrepreneurs, but we have a lot of people that own, brick and mortar businesses like coffee shops and things like that. And to be overwhelmed, the metaverse is a great example, right? Does my coffee shop or retail store need to be in the metaverse yet? And when you run it through those 3 pillars, probably not yet, right? You can just chill at this point and just wait. There's other usability cases maybe, but I think it's reassuring in a very good way for small business owners.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And that doesn't mean that you should just chill, right? So just we're clear, it's you shouldn't sit and rest on your laurels. Even if you run the coffee shop, you should realize that a lot of your customers, for example, will find you on social media. And social media, that landscape is shifting dramatically, right? It goes away from what used to be Facebook predominantly. Now it's, even Instagram is kind of on the brink. Yeah. And a lot of the content now is being created on TikTok. So do keep an eye out on the things which are real, but also become a little bit more relaxed. No, if you own a coffee shop, I can nearly guarantee you that you will not need to don a virtual reality headset anytime soon.
Yeah. So let's talk about are there certain things that you're seeing in the environment that entrepreneurs really should be paying attention to in today's future when we're talking about today or really maybe the next 5 years or so?
I think there's a bunch. I mean, I was just literally on the phone with an entrepreneur in of all places, Chile, who showed me an AI system which plugs into your Shopify online store, and it's made for people who have $500,000 in sale, $1 million in sales, so small businesses, and it does by using some very sophisticated algorithm, incredibly well gives you information about your sales prediction into the future. So it allows you to think about, what stock do I need to carry? Like how much of that stock do I need to carry, et cetera, so that my CapEx, et cetera, is managed, or my cash flow is managed well. To the point where you can literally go into the system and say, I have $100,000. What do I need to buy? And the system spits out and says like, hey, you're a fishing shop, here's based on the historical data we have from you, as well as forecast model we can do, here's what you should buy. Here's your shopping recommendation. This kind of stuff is happening. And that's the kind of stuff where I'm getting excited, because I think that is where you can use cutting edge technology, in a package which is being sold for like $100 as a software, as a service platform, and you just apply it to your business. These things I do get really excited about.
Yeah, it's exciting when you think about the efficiency that can be created. I get excited about the AI stuff too, right? Because there's so much efficiency that can be created in businesses. And I mean, this data prediction, like think about all the cash flow it saves. I mean, it could literally mean the difference of managing your cash flow to the point of profitability or managing your cash flow to the point of bankruptcy, right? That's powerful stuff. And for $100 a month, like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
that's really exciting. Yeah.
And then the other thing, again, as someone who's thinking about the future, I might sound a little boring here and a little like old school, but things I really get excited about is a lot of things become a service these days. So, for example, I wouldn't run a payroll anymore. I wouldn't hire someone who runs my payroll anymore. You just go to a service like Gusto, for example, right? And to do it really, really well. And I believe that as a small business owner, there's an insane amount of opportunity out there where you like take one person's salary, divide it up into like all the services you can buy these days to make your business run not only compliant, but even better than you could have done with a person. And that is what gets me excited, because that then frees up cycles, capital, brain space to do the stuff you are supposed to do, which is like really think about your business, really think about your customer and your products.
Right. And think about like the roles that even if you have like really good people in those roles now, like it frees them up to do much more creative things. Right. And really create happier employees too.
Yeah. I mean, this goes back to the old adage of like, oh my God, the machines will take over the jobs. And I mean, like every time I hear that argument, for years now, I just I laugh, because yes, of course, the machines will take some of the grunt work, but quite frankly, who likes to do the grunt work? And it will free up a whole bunch of creative space, as you just pointed out, Jessica, which allows us to create value add. And that is, of course, talking about selling your business, that is where the magic lies, right? That's where the multiples come from.
Right. Is this the creativity part? It's not, being able to do the grunt work faster or better. It's the creativity and being more innovative, which really actually takes us to my next topic that I want to talk about is, so say we as entrepreneurs, we want to incorporate a strategy of creativity and innovation into our companies. How do we weave that into our strategic planning process? Like, how do we become a company that is capturing these new innovative markets and opportunities at the right time?
I think it takes a little bit of practice. I think it takes deliberate practice. I think that's the important piece. Particular small and medium-sized businesses, and we work with a lot of those as well. I think the challenge is, of course, you're stuck in the day-to-day, and there's so much stuff you need to do, without a doubt. But if you don't make space, and I think regular space, to really think and plan for the future, and you do it only haphazardly, like every 4th of July weekend where you happen to have a little bit of time and you sit at the beach and you're like, oh, let me think about the future. I think you're missing out. A friend of mine, Bill Pasmore, who teaches over at Columbia University, has a framework he calls the 10-10-5. And he says 10% of your top management, so this was applied originally to big companies, but 10% of your top management should spend 10% of their time thinking 5 years out. And you can argue if that is it 10-10-5 or is it like 8-7-4, whatever it is. But the idea that you actually have a framework and a routine around this makes a ton of sense to me. I had the great pleasure to actually interview Jeff Weiner, who used to be the CEO of LinkedIn. And we talked about this idea about thinking about the future, while at the same time, make no mistake, your main attention needs to be in the present, right? Because you run the business. And Jeff told me that, and literally showed me this in his calendar. He said, what we do is we do Future Fridays. So he works Monday to Thursday on the core of the business, and then Friday is purely reserved for thinking and working on future initiatives. Now, you might not want to spend a whole day a week, which is pretty luxurious, I would say, but maybe there's a Future Friday afternoon, and you literally block that time and spend the time in terms of educating yourself, probably building a couple prototypes, trying things out, like using one of those SaaS products, these software as a service products, and try something. Or even just like sit down and think about the future, but do it in a regular and really strategic fashion, and you're on a good path.
Yeah, I think the key is what you said too, is disciplined, right? I've had time blocked in my schedule, actually Friday mornings too. And that has been what I call my thinking time, but it also has it's susceptible to creep, right? Like I'll have work creep and I'll creep over. I'll just take my thinking time at that Friday morning, but having that discipline around it to be like, oh, well, this block of time is as important as a client meeting would be, right? And the other key I like that you pointed out is it's just not me as the founder or the president, it's the leadership team, right? Because I can't come up with all of the great ideas myself, and you need different voices and thoughts. So I think that's very interesting and really easy to put in practice.
And I think it's not just the different thoughts and ideas and people. I think talking about diversity, I would actually encourage you to really seek out diversity, because there's so many blind spots we all have. There's so many biases we all carry. So go and when you think about and talk about the future, go as broad as you possibly can. Like talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to. So not just diversity in like gender or ethnicity, but like a good source is, for example, speak to your kids. And here's the thing: don't speak to your kids. Speak to your kids' friends, because your kids know you too well. But your kids' friends, they're like, hey, Joe, look at this. Like, this is, I spend a ton of time these days with high schoolers in places like Lincoln, Nebraska, where I sit down with them and say, I'm an old, like, white dude. I have no idea how you guys use the internet. Like, show me. Yeah. And it's so interesting, so like pointy, and it points towards what the future will look like. So really encourage you to just like go out, seek out, information. And also ask yourself, when you come up with an idea, there's a really powerful like inverting of the idea by asking yourself, how could I be wrong? Just like shake the idea a little bit by just asking yourself, how could I be wrong? So you're not getting too quickly into this is a thing, this is going to be amazing, I'm going to invest into this.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'd love to ask your kids, your friends, yeah, because and like, look, let's be honest, the next generation is always so much further ahead of us and using technology, and usually has some type of application we've never even thought of. So totally. So before we part, what parting words of advice do you have for entrepreneurs and small business owners on our topic today?
I think we covered it already very well. I think for me personally, really understand that the future is yours, right? Like we all collectively create the future. And what this means is there's an obligation for us to actually actively engage with the future. So I believe as an entrepreneur, I don't really need to tell you this as an entrepreneur, but like when it comes to the future, I think it's really just important to actively engage with the future. The other thing I would encourage you to do is, particularly because technology has become so accessible and cheap, that it is actually really helpful to just play with technology. So again, the metaverse is probably 10 years out, but you can buy a VR headset today for $300. Just buy one, play around with it, like get a feel for it, see how crappy it is at the moment, right? Yeah. So you get a real sense of like what does work or what doesn't work, but then don't stop there and say, well, it's not good, it won't be good, but really ask yourself like what could be, and then like you get into this interesting pattern of like, okay, if that could be, what needs to be in place, what needs to be done. And interesting enough, very often this presents really new, interesting opportunities for entrepreneurs to fill, because there's a lot of gaps to fill and businesses to build.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting entrepreneurship ideas. And they're actually one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who said this, but is that an opinion is a poor excuse for an experience, right? So go experience the metaverse and not form an opinion out of something you haven't experienced. If we were talking through those three questions, those three pillars earlier from our interview. So I've loved our conversation today. Always love talking to you, Pascal. How can people reach you or follow you online if they want more information?
The easiest is literally, we run a very, very small boutique, very weird advisory firm, but we publish a ton of stuff. So if you go to the internet, you find beradical.group. So beradical.group. That's the home of our work. We have a weekly newsletter where we publish all our research and a bunch of stuff we find on the internet. We've got free online courses. There's a whole bunch of resources which we make available for free to the community. So that's the easiest and probably the most fruitful way to find information.
All right, awesome. And we'll drop all that information into our show notes too. Thank you so much for being on the Deal Board today. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Jessica, thanks so much. This was a great conversation.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for Listing of the Week. Hey, welcome back, everybody. And it is Listing of the Week. And we have Bob Dunphy from Transworld Business Advisors of New York City. And he is here to tell you about a nice little business. And New York's coming back. It's on fire, right?
It is. And the nice thing about there's a lot of, for all the bad things about the pandemic, there are certain interesting and positive things that did come out. And one of those things is that people had time and had some resources to delve into their hobbies and really go deep on those. And so this business that I'm talking about here is a photo video electronics store here in the New York area that just did gangbusters, during the pandemic because people were home. They had time to take photography lessons. They had time to do research online. And, if there were some of those folks who went to their beach house or went to their mountain house or just went away somewhere, they wanted to do some photography. So they've done really well. They do about $200,000 a year in SDE, owner-operated business. And the asking price for the business is $600,000. They have a lot of inventory, as you might expect. So that's kind of one of the challenges. They have about $800,000 worth of inventory. But it's all good inventory. It's not stale inventory. But these folks have very long time relationships with the manufacturers, Panasonic, Ricoh, Nikon, Leica, all these folks, which are not easy to get and which we learned in the process of listening to business, you cannot get as an online only seller. They won't work directly with the online only sellers. You must have a retail store in order to get that direct distribution. So it's got some strategic appeal from that standpoint. And even as an owner-operated thing, if you love photography and like to be in that business and maybe get a small discount on your equipment because you're buying it wholesale, this is a good spot for you.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of hobby businesses did really well in the pandemic, and I don't see that slowing down. I think it's certainly a mindset of people that they have to have balance in their lives and do things. And certainly the photography business out there in the world of social media and video is just exploded, and people want better quality content. So, so it's all good. Hey, listen, if somebody wants to get in touch with you about this business, what's the best way?
Yep. So bdunphy@tworld.com is my email address. 917-589-0977 is my phone. But, I'm like the top two Bob Dunphys on Google searches. So if you look for a business broker and Bob Dunphy comes up, it's probably me.
It's probably you. Excellent. Thanks for coming on. Great business. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Andy. Take care.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we have a special guest on our special subject of futurism and what's going on out there in the world. Things are changing so fast. And we have Oren Schauble from Product
World. Let's go.
Product World. It's a pretty simple name. And he is he's always a forward thinker. We saw his stuff out there on the internet and we said, we got to talk to Oren about, just what's going on. You had a fresh approach. So we thought we'd get you on board. And so thank you for coming. and I appreciate it. So let's just jump right in. What are you seeing out there? The world's changing so fast, right?
Yeah, it is. And so, and just some quick background. I've always, whether sometimes by luck, sometimes by choice, ended up working in really progressive industries. So things like, autonomy, or even in, things like newly legalizing markets, things like that. And so I've always just tried to keep my finger on the pulse of exactly what's happening. But a lot of what I'm seeing out here relevant to small entrepreneurs is this kind of really new, exciting climate where you can build and sell small businesses. And where there's kind of just a new opportunity where all these large conglomerates that we grew up with, like whether it's in beverage or whether that's in technology, are now being kind of displaced by hundreds of smaller, more niche companies. And I think that that's a real generational opportunity that business owners should be aware of. That's really exciting.
Yeah, I say that to young people all the time. I think the opportunity to go out there and market yourself and create a product and go viral is, you couldn't do that, 20 years ago. So obviously there's a huge opportunity for people to carve out a niche in certain industries.
Yeah, and I think there's been a consumer shift as well, where they're saying, hey, I don't want the most ubiquitous thing. I don't want, the Coca-Cola. I want this thing that speaks directly to me, this, whatever that ends up being. And also there's avenues for which you can actually sell those businesses easily. Now in this world where you can say, hey, I'm taking this to some, it's a side business. I take it to some small level. I can sell it on MicroAcquire or Flippa or BizBuySell, and I can go do another one. It just opens up this new era of entrepreneurship where you combine like social media, top of funnel, the ability to easily buy and sell businesses, and then all this emerging technology and new ideas. And so I think it's just a wonderful time to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned a couple of industries that was interesting, like the beverage industry, people making huge money in the beverage industry. It's funny, somebody just sent me a case of like specially curated sodas.
Yeah, it's a trend.
Right. It's like, and it's like, wow. I mean, like who would ever think that they should go up against Coke or Pepsi, but you're seeing it all over the place. And then you see those businesses spin up, grow, and then sell for big bucks. But even like, how would you even like talk about like, to people who are listening out there, like, how do you even get started doing something like that?
And so I think that's what I've spent a lot of time on. It's why I started this kind of Product World website. And I have a newsletter called Product People where we go through this because it's easier than people think. You can basically say, if you can find a factory or a co-packer, whether it's a beverage brand or a product brand, that's not easier than ever before. Because what happened overseas with Alibaba is it opened up this whole new world of manufacturing. You can search essentially just like you'd search Google or Amazon to find people that will produce products for you. And there's all kinds of nuance within the platform, but that didn't exist again like a decade, 2 decades ago. You couldn't just go find thousands and thousands of international manufacturers in your specific niche. And then it's also the same thing in the US. Nowadays, I think in the United States, if you wanted to go get a beverage co-packed, you don't have to have millions of dollars to start that process. You can start small. And also, I'm seeing more and more local manufacturers willing to partner with entrepreneurs if they believe in them or like the idea or take equity in it and offset some of the capital they'd make and bring new things to market, because I think they see the shifting seas as well. And so if you are going to start that right away, I do think it's a matter of coming up with a differentiated concept is the biggest idea, saying, what am I doing different than what people are doing in the market? There's a couple ways to look at that. You could say, I'm going for a lower price point. You could say, I'm really trying to appeal to a certain specific niche audience, which is what I recommend, and say, hey, we're going to make, a vegan soda with a sustainable bottle or whatever that is, or we're going to make something for people who really love the flavor orange, or we're going to take it to the far maximum. Find some differentiated thing that you can lean into, and then also see if you get traction online. The other huge benefit of what's happening right now is you can go without even having a product. Just mock it up or make a couple organic videos on TikTok. And if you go make 30, 40 videos, just yourself talking about your product or showing it off in fun and unique ways, if it can start getting traction, you can see if there's a response in the market for essentially for free, which is something that didn't exist before. And then you can say, oh, I'm getting a response. People want this. They're signing up on my email newsletter, whatever it is. And then you can actually go act on bringing it to market. There's also this amazing trend of being able to evaluate ideas online that we didn't have access to, that I think if you're starting to start a business, you should definitely have in the back of your head.
That's great advice. I mean, going out on, on TikTok, and I think I saw somebody with apple cider vinegar soda on TikTok trying to promote that. And, certainly TikTok is getting more and more ads in there of people promoting things, and even the big companies realize the value in it. But like you said, people are just starting with, small little things, whether it's the cooking videos or the athletic things or again, beverages, there's all kinds of things, clothing, certainly, lots of people with
digital
clothing.
Content is a huge opportunity too, because I see if you just make a normal thing, say you just make another workout device similar to any other workout device out there, a workout shirt, but you're an expert in the space, you're a coach or something of that nature, then you can add on content to that. You can basically say, hey, I'm going to sell you this, but I'm also going to give you my 7 hours of workouts free, or this or that, and create differentiators that way. I think is something that's really untapped into in a lot of spaces, because it's still consumer value, but it's free for you to make. You make it one time, you use it forever. And it's a differentiator. So I do think in the cooking niche and the fitness niche, in anything related that has an education component, I think there's a huge opportunity there for entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah, you're seeing it. I mean, we do it all the time, right? We're here on this podcast, and we're trying to teach people about the world of small business and buying and selling, and we try to give away a lot of content, and to show that we're experts in what we're talking about, and then when we're not experts, we're bringing people like you on to add value. I mean, I think that's what we're trying to do, to show that we can add value to the marketplace.
Yeah, completely. I just think it's a really exciting time, and I do want to lean into. It's a little bit different for food and beverage, where a lot of things have to happen domestically, but the international supply chain is such a giant opportunity. All of the things that we know and love are generally made internationally. We just don't. Sure. So it's kind of like unspoken. And now to be able to go to factories and get competitive pricing, no matter who you are, by just navigating this kind of online portal, is a huge opportunity. I think people tend to be dissuaded from that because it seems complicated or it seems esoteric, but it's really not. It's just person-to-person communication, negotiating to buy a thing, which is kind of, I think, a base level skill set for any entrepreneur. And I think that just that opportunity of the global supply chain available to us today is huge. And I think we're going to see in the future kind of groups of people from different places. Maybe it's an entrepreneur from America and a design team from Eastern Europe and a manufacturer in China building companies and brands together. I think that's going to lead to a really interesting new generation of companies.
Yeah, the world is truly flat, right?
It's great.
And funny you say that, because I used to watch people manufacture a product here in the United States, right? So they go to a local shop where they either are plastics or some sort of screw machine shop, or metal shop, and they'd get something made, be very expensive, but they'd go to the marketplace and maybe even lose money on it, just the kind of proof of product. And then if they wanted to manufacture it in Korea or in China or in Vietnam, they literally got on a plane and had to drive around that country to find a factory and cut a deal with one of the factory owners. And now you're saying you don't even need to leave your home.
And they have rankings. It's like Yelp. Okay, I can see a bunch of 5 stars. I can see how much money's been ordered from them. I can see what the reviews are online and understand what you're getting into. And again, that's just incredible, because I've done that too. I've been in Hong Kong, I've been in Shenzhen and Ningbo, and gone through that process of not necessarily driving door to door, but at least getting intros and trying to work through that validation, and how the fact you can do that from whatever country you're in, thousands of miles away is really exciting. And I think that it's also leaning into the expertises of different places and the inputs of different places. And I think people are becoming more willing to collaborate, even though I know it's complicated technically with company structures and things, but across countries and across places to build unique things.
Excellent. So what do you see as some of the industries that might get shaken up moving into the future? Like you're seeing the car industry. It's interesting in the car industry, right? Electric vehicles. And you're seeing, again, I see some content out there, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or of independent car companies literally building cars one by one. And people kind of, the traditional build a car, put it in a dealership, is going away.
So I think, food and beverage is a big one, where I think that especially the millennial and Gen Z customers want discovery versus consistency, where I think, for more boomer generations, Gen X, they want to go buy the thing that they like again and again, and then maybe occasionally experiment, whereas experimentation is first for millennial and Gen Z industries. They say, oh, what's the new thing I can try today, versus I'm going to get this thing that I always get. And I think that consumer shift in taste is kind of radical for anything kind of food and beverage, because it's just a very different way to approach it and needs more options and variety. So I think that one's a particularly interesting one. I do think that we're seeing more and more companies zone in on how can I do the same thing at a similar price point sustainably, which I think is interesting and kind of applies across industries. And even only some customers might choose to want to purchase based on that, but a lot are aligning their values that way anyway. And then I do think that the the software or digital industry, not to only stick with physical products, is also interesting as well. Because again, it's how do you create some niche service to solve a problem specific to like one set of users, because of how easy it is to create software and digital files now. And I think a trend I'm interested in there that I've seen a lot of is now companies are kind of grouping together. They'll say, oh, we have a software product. These other 3 companies have similar ones with a similar audience. We're going to form a company together, centralize marketing and accounting and a few of these things, the way they do for Amazon roll-ups or things of that nature, and kind of build these little software portfolios. And I think that's going to be interesting too, because these smaller teams can innovate often faster than larger companies developing software, just because of the nature of how decisions get made in companies like that. And so I think we're going to see these little, mini software groups kind of forming. And I do encourage entrepreneurs, whether you're in physical products or software products, to think about, hey, would I grow faster if I was partnered with a couple other companies in my space? And can we just, it's going to suck to hash out all the logistics around who owns what and how that works, but are we all going to be the better for it at the end of the day and make more money and, and grow faster? I think that's 100% the case for a lot of these growing businesses, and something people should really be considering. And then we're seeing a lot more of because of the collaboration enabled by the internet.
Yeah, I say that all the time to entrepreneurs, when they're trying to come up with something new. The first thing you got to do is go out there and see if anybody else is doing it. And maybe you could even buy it, right? So, exactly. I've had some ideas for a certain kind of app, and I've pinged a few people that sort of built it and said, hey, I think I could help you if you just did this to your app, and maybe I'd even back it and be a part of what you're doing now.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think that going and hunting down those opportunities too, and finding collaborators online, and this is why I love Twitter a lot, spend a lot of time on there, and like surfacing other people that are interested in the same things and building them semi in public and trying to achieve that and working together is another one of those things that just wasn't available to entrepreneurs 10, 20 years ago, and everyone should be taking advantage of.
So give me a little bit of an ABC of what somebody should do if they're interested in a product or a piece of software. What's the first thing?
In terms of making a company?
Yeah.
Or
if they wanted to go out there.
So I think the first thing is to really define what your idea is. And so I have an exercise I like to recommend people for physical products, although it can also be tailored to software products. If you want to make a sunglass, for instance, or you want to make a, whatever an individual product is, we'll stick with the sunglass example. I recommend going and ordering a handful of them from specific brands and then documenting every step of the experience. So for instance, if you said, hey, I'm going to order a pair from Amazon, I'm going to order a pair from a premium brand like Moscot, and I'm going to say, from my search experience online to how I checked out, to the information I was given, like emailed for terms of shipping updates, to the box I received and how fast I received it, to what's in it, to the instructions, to how long it lasted. Document every single thing you think about in that process. And then when you actually go through that with a few products, you're going to have these big lists of things, and you're going to be like, you can look at it and say, okay, what did I love about this? And then what did I hate about this? And if one of the things is, hey, all these people, mailed it to me a week and a half late, I want to be the next day shipper of the sunglass industry because I see it's wide open. Or, hey, guess what? All these, in 6 months, all these products, evaporated. So we need to focus on longevity. Or I couldn't find anyone who I could call for customer support or chat. I'm going to build a support-based company of this. But look at where those opportunities are. I think that exercise is really valuable to understand your space. But you have to do the part where you actually write down every step and like what you saw and didn't see, because that can become your product roadmap and also teaches you to think like a product developer and not just like a consumer who's making a product. So exercise I highly recommend for anyone kind of starting out. And then you have a roadmap you can go to a factory or a partner with and develop something.
So tell me a little bit about why people hire you to do what you do.
So I work a lot now on expanding product roadmaps. So someone will have a couple products, but they won't know how to build out a full portfolio, or they're getting to a certain size and they want to figure out how do we get supply chain or connect the dots to do it at a larger scale because they're running into those issues. And so I work a lot on basically workshops and exercises where someone will come in and say, here's our product mix today. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't. And we develop a plan for the future. And a lot of that comes down to prioritizing, saying, okay, are you trying to make more margin? Are you trying to have more velocity? Are you trying to appeal to a new consumer base? Are there sales that are just being left because you don't have the right things? And then we'll walk through a SKU list. So we'll go through, your hero SKUs, which are your top, your products that sell the most, your secondaries, which are kind of like it, but don't have the same velocity, then your attachments, so things you sell or upsell at checkout, and then, collaborations and partnerships and limited editions and, loss leaders or cheaper things that get new customers in the door. And then we'll kind of walk through all the options and, build a plan for it. and then go through those kind of exercises to say, how do we differentiate these and make them better enough, and then go work with partners to execute it. So, I end up working with a lot of brands basically inside that time in their brand story, and trying to make the most of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's a lot to it, right? So, coming out of your bedroom, I worked with a company where a young girl was making cupcakes, and she actually wound up renting a storefront. And then she went and she won awards. I mean, local awards, Entrepreneur of the Year for Florida. I mean, just incredible stuff. And then went to college. Her mother had to keep running the cupcake factory. And then they wanted to scale it beyond that. And you run into a lot of, being an entrepreneur and being the original idea person and then running a large company is two distinctly different things. And you're right. You have to partner with people along the way. I've partnered with people along the way to build Transworld through a franchise system because I didn't know how to run a franchise, but I partnered with someone. So I think that's great advice. I mean, you need someone to help guide you through that roadmap.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So to kind of wrap this up, we're talking about futurism again. Give me something that you like, a product you like that you could promote, or even something that you see coming down the line that you say, hey, everybody, watch out for this. This is going to be neat.
I do think that it's less an actual product or individual thing, but that opportunity to use short video right now. So it's not just TikTok, but TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. So whatever you're promoting, if you're making 1 minute to 90-second videos and putting them out there, you're going to be able to catch traffic and new visitors in a way that we have not had, like an era of social media where you can just get people interested in your product in a long time, since probably early Facebook. And so I would recommend, no matter what you're building, to kind of to lean into that, whether you're telling your own story or having someone tell it for you. I think that it's a really unique opportunity happening right now. So I'll choose that.
Yeah, it's a great one. I agree. YouTube Shorts and Facebook and Reels and Instagram. It's just beyond TikTok. I mean, TikTok just exploded and everybody's just trying to catch up now. It's interesting that Snap has kind of fallen by the wayside, or maybe I'm just not the guy using Snap these days.
Yeah, it has, but I still see people that seem successful running ads on it. I don't do it personally, but I always look at it and I'll see some of the stories and I'll be like, I should be looking at that, but we'll see. There's still plenty of opportunity inside lots of these networks.
There's still plenty of opportunity out there. And Oren, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you and talk to you about your services, what's the best way to do that?
So productworld.xyz. I recommend signing up for the newsletter called Product People. We've got about 4,000 entrepreneurs on there who are interested in building physical products and it's a fun kind of free resource with factories and breakdowns that a lot of people enjoy. And then that website also has tons of resources for people trying to start their own brand. I'm putting out there for free. And so excited to see what you build. Definitely let me know.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Just incredible stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. I love the chance to talk about these things. So appreciate it.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for Listing of the Week.
Welcome back, everybody. It is Listing of the Week, and I have Paul Ripon from Transworld Business Advisors of Minnesota. And we sell a lot of medical practices, and you have a great one, right?
I do. It's a practice of 6 locations, and the gentleman who has been running the business is for 27 years. He is now looking to retire, sell his business, and move on with life. Apparently, he has plans to sit on some beach and watch his toenails grow, but I do not believe that for a second. The challenge that I faced with this particular listing is that it was highly priced, almost by $1 million. So The initial reaction from buyer side was that it is not a business that is valued at that price. Anyway, 7 weeks into the listing, he agreed to reduce the price by about $1 million.
Wow.
And suddenly the buyers started to come in by the troves.
All right, so it's a mental health practice, correct?
It's a mental health practice, and the owner has offered me free counseling session after the deal closes.
Excellent. Yeah, you'll need it, right?
I do.
Right. All right, so what's the best way to get in touch with you, Paul?
Best way to reach me is by phone, 612-310-3265. And of course, Minnesota Trans World Business Advisors.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you have questions, would like to appear, or have suggestions for topics for the show, get in contact with us through our website, thedealboardpodcast.com.